Good morning and welcome to the Closers Inner Circle podcast with your host Denise Griffitts and Bengay the Third. Today we are in week 7 and we're continuing our in-depth exploration of the sales infiltration chapter from the Closers Part 2. Now this is a multi-part series and we designed it almost deliberately. It was an accident, but almost deliberately to provide a masterclass in advanced sales strategies, and we're offering listeners actionable insights to elevate their sales. You caught that, Ben? I'm doing pronouns now. Their sales approach and transform their careers or sales careers. So we really want you to prepare for maximum impact. And that means that we really want you to go take a moment to catch up on weeks 1 through 6 of the Closers Inner Circle podcast. You can find them anywhere you listen to your podcast, but you can go to your partner in success radio where these things are housed. And these foundational episodes provide essential context and insights into really powerful strategies that we've been discussing. And that is meant to ensure that you get the most out of this series. So those links are in the podcast show notes. Again, you can just go to yourpartnerinsuccessradio.com and you will see Ben's smiling face. He's up there every Wednesday. And additionally, to maximize your learning experience and gain as much sales wisdom as possible, do try to make sure that you have the closers books, part 1 and part 2, in your entrepreneurial library. And these books are crucial companions to this podcast series because they offer in-depth knowledge that will enhance your understanding and application of the strategy shared by Master Closer, Bengay the Third. Ben, good morning. It's Wednesday. You know what that means? Trash day and Denise. And
For new
and I knew
listeners,
I
for,
knew when I said it what that was going to
yeah,
sound
for
like.
new listeners, we might want to clear that up. Here in my neighborhood on Wednesdays, if I'm in town, it's my job to take the trash to the street for Thursday morning pickup. So I kid Denise about Wednesday's important to me because I get to take the trash out and talk to her. But I,
Maybe I should have put me first in trash sec. No, no, that
yeah.
wouldn't work either. Never mind.
But just to clear that up, that's waste removal, not white trash or trash or whatever.
Southern trash.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we are on week 7. And before we get to rocking and rolling, tell people where they can get these books because it really is important to have them in front of you. You can mark them up. I don't mark mine, that's against my religion, but you can mark them up. I use, sticky notes and, I make notes in my note application app. But it's important to have these books in front of you so you can understand what we're saying because we do wander around a bit. We don't just read a chapter and go, here you go for it. There's great stories that come with everything we're talking about. So, Ben, how do they get them and with free shipping?
Yeah, resist the temptation to go to Amazon. Their system, at least as it relates to us, is currently screwed up. So you probably won't get a book. Uh, but the way I know you'll get a book, signed, dated, unconditional money back, no questions asked, lifetime guarantee, is to go to stores, stores dot ebay dot com, and then this is all one word, Ronzoni Books, RONZONEBOOKS. And if you do that before 2 o'clock California time, your order will go out that day, and it with free shipping, where Amazon and even my website site charge for shipping. So you get special pricing, free shipping, lifetime money back guarantee. Pretty good deal, but that's only at Ronzoni Books. So make sure that that's where you order, and you got nothing to lose. We guarantee them for life. And so if you retire 20 years from now and remember it, you can return your book with a receipt for full credit.
I don't have a receipt, but that's because you gifted me my books.
Well, then don't return them.
Well, I want to because one of them's falling apart. I mean, every time I pick it up, I've learned to pick it up very gingerly because those pages just fly out, and I guess I'm going to have to tape them. And I know there's binding tape, and I need to find some, but right now I've got the book literally just clipped together. I've read it so many times and so often I actually don't even need it.
Mine are, as you can imagine, beaten up. I had a guy one time in the office see me reach for the closers part one for some reason. And then I flipped through it and it's heavy. It's like a government redacted document in that every word is gone. In mine, every word is yellow highlighted or underlined or notes in the margin or something. And he said, Ben, I'll give you $10,000 for that book. Uh, I said, why? You can get a new one for $24.95. He said, I don't want a new one. I want the one with your thoughts and notes and so on. So if I ever retire, I'm going to lie in bed highlighting closers books, looking for some new person who wants to give me $10,000 for one. I can mark one up pretty good for $10,000.
I'll help. Just
Yeah, I'll
just
send
send
you
it to
some.
me. Yeah. Send it to me, but I'll be marking in pink or green or something. So I hate to mark books. My librarian, my school librarian would rear up and get me. I know she would. She'd be looking over my shoulder. I wanted to very, very quickly. We're diving deeper into sales infiltration. I mean, this is, part seven. So before we get rocking and rolling, can you break down the concept for our listeners and explain why it is so crucial for
Yeah, I
sales
studied
strategies?
I I was taught by J. Douglas Edwards, the great old sales trainer. In fact, I wrote his book, Sales Closing Power, for him after he died from my notes and from his recordings and so on. But his was a little bit of I said, you say, you say. And that was great when I was learning because you got to start somewhere. But I'd noticed that I didn't hear the great salespeople that I worked with doing that. Jimmy Rucker, the greatest salesperson I ever personally worked with, for instance, his presentations and his conversations were seamless. You couldn't find the beginning or the end or the whatever. It was like getting a body rub. He was just smooth as he could be. Zig Ziglar, uh, from the stage, uh, would say, they say this, you say this, so on. But when he sat down to sell, we were in the same company at the same time. He didn't do that. He was like Jimmy Rucker, he was a sales infiltrator. I was raised as a Southern gentleman. I work with a company, for instance, Kirby Vacuum Cleaners, who they say, or at least some of their people say, the sales presentation isn't over until you have payment or the police have been called. Well, they're kidding, but that's what they
I don't
say.
know.
Yeah. Uh,
I've
I,
actually had, and this is, I really don't have anything against these poor people. They show up with their little Bible and they stick their foot in your door. I've actually hurt one of them. I slammed that door so hard. He was like, I know you're yelping out there. And I just kind of went through the window, said, sorry, and then let him toddle off
that's
down. But
that's the reason, there's things you sort of look for. Like I say, if you want to build a great sales organization, get a list of Eagle Scouts
oh,
from from 15 years ago, and they were winners then, they're winners now. They will continue to be winners. Put them on your sales organization. Among the things that will perk me up, and if when I'm interviewing people for myself or client companies or teaching them how to interview, if somebody tells me they're a Jehovah's Witness or a Mormon, I'm more interested than I otherwise would be. It has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with they can handle rejection. They get, I have a friend who's a Jehovah's Witness. I said, how often do they get a door slammed on you? What he said, oh, 19 out of 20 times. And I said, my God, and you keep going. He said, I was ordained or instructed by God, whatever their belief is, uh, to do it, to witness. I wasn't ordained or instructed to get results. My job is to witness. Knock on the door. You want to slam the door? Fine. Next. And he moves down the street. He doesn't
And they
take it.
do. They do.
Yeah.
When this happened, this was many, many years ago, and I didn't really mean to slam it on his foot, but he had his foot in my door, which instantly had me going, "Oh, no, you didn't." But he did. And I just, and it was a big old heavy metal door that was painted to look like wood. And I did slam it and I heard this terrible yelp, but I wasn't going to go out and minister to him. Caught that what I did there? It wasn't gonna happen. And
I
I
would.
went when they made it down because I lived on a lake and they had to go down the path basically to get off of my property. And once I saw the tail end of them, I went out and I watched them and they went to every single door.
Yep.
They didn't make
Door
it
door
past
slammed
us.
on your foot doesn't mean anything.
It didn't, and
Next.
not a person spoke to them. But I mean, it was in the middle of the day. I don't know what they were thinking, but yeah, I really wanted to know, would they make it into a door or would somebody come out and speak to them? And I didn't see anybody.
About 1 out of 20, according to my
Yeah.
friend. So,
Wow. I felt bad
oh,
for them, but not enough to take him an ice pack. I was just, I'm
cute
not that
story.
nice of a person.
Friend of mine, again, either a Mormon or a Jehovah's Witness. I frankly forget who told it to me, but they were working in a mobile home park, trailer park. And he came up to a door, knocked on it, got screamed at, door slammed in his face, and so on. And then he went around it happened to be a corner lot. He went around the corner and accidentally knocked on the back door of the same unit.
Uh-oh.
And this lady opened the door and I guess admired his tenacity or something. Said, "Well, hi, how are you?" And he said, "Oh, thank God, a friendly face. You wouldn't believe the lady who screamed at me at the last place." She, he was talking to
Did
her.
she
I don't
keep talking to him?
Yeah, I don't know if he got it or not. But the reason I
Oh,
went down that road was if you scream at me to get out of the house and we're waiting for the police to be called, I'm long gone before
oh
that.
yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
Southern gentleman. You don't want me in your house. I don't want to be there. Have a nice day. So I was looking for a way where a nice person who wasn't prepared like a cocked gun to fire back at every objection. I was looking for a place a way to not be asked to leave. And so my antennas were up when I started studying Jimmy Rucker and Zig Ziglar and some of the other great salespeople that I worked with up close and personal. And then I watched some of the greats on stage and discovered that off stage, they not only didn't do that, many of them weren't very good salespeople uh, because it was all theory to them. So sales infiltration starts on page 257 in the closers part two. And we drift all over the chapter. It's about 40 pages long. It's the best thing I've ever written about selling. I think, frankly, the best thing that has ever been written by anybody about selling, because it finally shows you what a master closer sales infiltrator is, does, and how to be one. And as I say in the beginning of the chapter, that's a subtlety. It's like writing a book about how to ride a bicycle. I really had to work on it to get it down where I could explain what it was. But the gist of it was a gentlemanly way to not get thrown out of a house, an office, off the phone, off the internet, or whatever, by being a kind, decent, but effective person. I have a closing rate of 86%. And I'm not talking about taking a book order, but a real sale for a seminar or consulting or whatever, or 500 books or whatever, 86%. And I didn't get there by being weak and soft. I got there by being effective. And that is sales infiltration. It's exactly what Jimmy Rucker did, what Zig Ziglar did, and all the greats that I worked with without exception. They didn't know it was called sales infiltration. I came up with that because of an air conditioning guy talking to me about a filtration system. And I was in the middle of trying to write the chapter, but I didn't have a title yet. And when he said filtration, I jumped up, said, listen, I'm sure you got other things to do here in the building. Go do those. I really appreciate it. You've given me the key to the lock. And he left my office looking over his shoulder like, I wonder what the hell that meant. He didn't have any idea. But that chapter and the book it contained in has sold millions of copies all over the world, due in great part to the sales infiltration concept. It shows you uh, how to deal with people. I spend a lot of time. I've written 35 books, written, edited, ghostwritten, whatever. 35 books on selling, marketing, overcoming objections, personal development, and so on. And so I have to know that stuff, but I don't close sales. What I do is I overcome the objections up front. I set the table. In other words, here's how we're going to work together. In so many words, I'm saying, I know you don't like or trust me because I'm a salesperson, and I think you're going to lie to me to delay the sale because you're a customer. What we're going to do, that's team A, team B. What we're going to do is form team C and find out if you and I together, have a problem that's solvable. And if it is, we will work together to solve it. And if not, no hard feelings. Next. So, based on that theory, I don't hear objections like most people hear. What I hear is, uh, here's my big close. Uh, when we're done, I say something like, uh, based on what you've told me, or based on what we've talked about, either one will work depending on the situation I'm in. Here's what I suggest we do. I don't say it that way. I say, here's what I suggest we do. But my point being, Team C has been formed. We've agreed on a problem. We've talked about it. We have the solution. And so here's what I suggest we do. And we is a big part of sales infiltration.
Oh,
As
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as I meet a customer, or the receptionist or whatever, I'm a member of the team. How do we feel about this? What do you do when, what do we do when somebody walks in who shouldn't be here and is trying to get past you because you're the gatekeeper? With the sale. And one of the joys of doing personal coaching and personal mentoring that I do, I frequently talk to people who say, well, I don't know if your ways will work or not. And I'm able to say, well, they obviously are. Several of your very top producers are personal clients of mine. And there's always a silence upon it.
Right.
And then
Right.
they'll want to know, well, who are they? I said, no, I don't
Uh-uh.
I don't do that. If they want you to know that they work with
They'll
me,
tell you.
they
Right.
can tell you, and that's fine. But one of the reasons I seem to know so much about your business is I'm in your business. Almost every day, I'm talking to one of your top producers because that's who tends to hire me. So that's sales infiltration in a nutshell. And it's what's really going. The closers part one I describe to people as the kicks, the blocks, and the punches of selling. Selling the way it is if you're an amateur, and selling the way it is if you're not a real classy customer or prospect. But you got to know that. It's like when you go to karate school. I've sent all my sons to karate school. They all want to, or taekwondo. They all want to know when they get there, how do I kill somebody? And their instructor, you and I have discussed this before, but Donnie Omega will tell them in so many words, I understand your need to know that, and we'll get to it. But more importantly, I'm going to teach you how to never have to get in a fight. And the first time I heard him say that to my oldest son years ago, after the session was over, I said, Donnie, you'd make a great salesperson. That's exactly what I do. I don't have to fight anybody. He was telling me about one time he was sitting in a bar. I can't picture that. He's such a wholesome guy, but he was sitting in a local bar that we all know, if you live here, which is sort of rough around the edges. And I said, I've heard about you sitting at a bar when a fight broke out. He said, oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And I said, you didn't get involved. He said, why would I get involved? I don't know anybody in there. I think he was meeting someone. And he said chairs and stools were flying, and I'm sitting there and people are punching people they don't even know because they've got caught up in the mob frenzy. And I said, no one messed with you? He said, no. He said, no one has messed with me since I came to the conclusion that I know, that I know, that I know, and therefore they know. And that's what a sales infiltrator, a master closer, conveys to the customer. Happy to have you here. This ain't my first rodeo. I can help you unless you just, don't like me or don't need or want the product at any price. If you don't want my product for free, you don't want me to even leave it in the lobby, there's not much I can do except show you some more benefits, but pretty much the sale's over. That's fine with me. I don't have a problem. I estimate, Denise, that I've given roughly 100,000 face to face. I'm not talking about group closes with 15,000 people in the room. I'm talking about one-on-one, face to face, about 100,000 sales presentations, at the end of which, in one form or another, I ask for the order. And I have an 86% closing rate. People go, ooh. The question they ought to ask is, how come you lost 14% of everybody you talked to? That means that
They were the
14,000
door
people.
slammers. Yeah,
Yeah.
those were the Denises in the audience.
14,000 people have listened to the wonderful Ben Gay presentation and said, no, get out, go
Right.
away,
Or in
you
the deep
know.
south, you go now. You go.
Scoot.
I know, but I have to tell you, Ben, and I think I've shared this with you before, maybe not on the radio, but I didn't know. I had no idea that I was a natural sales infiltrator until I met you because I'm
You are.
rarely told no.
Yeah, you are. You're one of those naturals, like Jimmy Rucker.
Yeah,
I had to break the news to him that he was a salesperson. He said, "No, I just talk to people."
me too. Same thing.
Yeah.
Remember, I told you the story years ago. I was in a hardware store because I had bought two little pigs at a livestock auction. I used to talk a lot. I learned to sit on them after that. But I had two little pigs in the trunk of my car and I didn't know what to do with them. I mean, I had land, I had property, but it wasn't fenced. I didn't know what to do with these little pigs. They wouldn't take them back. So I'm in there and this tiny little wizened farmer was listening to me convincing anybody within earshot to take these little pigs. They were free. I named them Bacon and Grease. They had names. They needed to go somewhere. And he tapped me on the shoulder. He said, honey, I've got to tell you, you're the best natural salesperson I've ever met. And I didn't know whether to stomp on his head or cry. I was so
I'm
offended.
not a salesperson.
I couldn't even come up with that. I think my jaw dropped and I just looked down at him because he was tiny and he wandered off. I never saw him again. Every day I think of him and I send him a little in heaven. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. You were right. I was wrong. I didn't know. I was young and stupid. It's my only excuse. But I did, and I was offended, startled, but deep down I was offended.
Yeah, of course. I've told you this many times, but at the risk of repeating myself, Jimmy Rucker is a great salesperson, or was. He's retired now, and he means it. I mean, he's really pulled up the drawbridge. But I would, in the early days, I was doing sales training because I was talkative and liked the attention. And I say, Rucker, get up here, because Rucker was a better salesperson than I was. Zig Ziglar had a partner named Mel Lanius, who was a stone cold salesperson, master closer, much better than Zig was. So Zig was sort of the front man for their organization. I was the front man for mine or ours. And so I said to Jimmy numerous times until I learned my lesson, Jimmy, get up here and tell him what you do. Because I knew he was better. I mean, he's sitting there taking notes while I'm talking. He's better. So he would get up and he said, well, I don't, he's a Southern boy. I don't know. Just watch me in the meetings and do what I
Do
do.
what I do. And that's what I tell people. People would say, Denise, can you teach me podcasting? Just do what I do. Oh, geez, that didn't work. So now I'm actually teaching it. By the way, I did not leave with those two little pigs. They found a home in the hardware store.
All right.
I know, I
Then you
forgot to
are a
tell
great
that part.
natural sales. Anybody
Apparently,
can sell two pigs in a hardware store
I
is a
know.
salesperson.
And I even gave them, they were in little pillow, they were tiny. They were in pillowcases. I didn't know what to do with them. And I had propped the trunk open so they could breathe. But I even gave them my pillowcases. Could I afford to do that at that age? No. But I was so desperate to get them to a new home. Now, whether they got big and fat and got ate, I don't know. I never asked.
A dear friend of mine, Ralph Johnson, gone now, started Van Pack International Carriers. For those of you who've moved military furnishings, you move from Oklahoma to Germany or whatever. Back in those days, what they brought you was a big purple container. It said Van Pack International Carriers on it. Put it in your front lawn. You packed it up. The doors were locked. They were not unlocked till they got on your front lawn in Germany, and then you unpacked it. That was his great breakthrough in thinking. Now they have pods and all sorts of things that come from that. I said all that to say this. He was a very wealthy, sophisticated guy, and he and his wife invited me up to their house for some reason. I think I was doing some consulting with them. And as I got out of the car, he says, "Oh, I want you to meet Buck and Blanche." Well, it turns out Buck and Blanche were two of the, I'm a city guy. I had never seen pigs that size. I guess they were hogs. Maybe there's a subtle difference. They were like
Not really.
cows.
Little pigs are pigs. Hogs will scare the stupid out of you.
Well, that Buck and Blanche were of that size and drooling, and I greeted him through a fence and patted him on the head. I said, "Wow, that's really something." He said, "Yeah, they're house pets to us." I said, "House pets?" He said, "Sure." And he opened the gate, and Buck and Blanche went in the house. And I looked down at the parquet floor. Is that what the wooden floor is? That's decorative. It had pig prints, hoof prints all over the floor. And these are sophisticated, wealthy people.
But they
They
love them.
they loved Buck and Blanche, and Buck and
Right.
Blanche liked to watch television, get some treats, and go back to their pen. So if you'd held on to your pigs, someday you might have had a Buck and Blanche. I mean, these things were so
No.
big, as friendly as they were scary.
Well, and I should have known better because when I was a kid, my grandmother made bathtub gin. My grandparents were farmers on my maternal side. And she always wanted us to go out and slop the hogs. These were not pigs, these were hogs, and they were scary. And we were little, but we would just throw stuff over the fence and run like crazy people. And she said, okay, go slop the hogs. Well, nobody told me not to take the potato peelings out of the bathtub. And I did. And they got drunk.
Oh,
And oh, yeah, they were big time drunk. They broke out of that gate, fence, pen, whatever they were in, and they made it down to the creek. We didn't call it a creek, it was a creek.
yeah.
And they just threw themselves down in there and gulped as much water as they could. So I've had a thing about pigs ever since. It's like, why did sit on your hands, Denise? No more talking. Shut up. So,
And Buck and Blanche were housebroken.
oh gosh.
Never went to the bathroom in the house. Never had an accident, I was told. I was only with them 20, 30 minutes, but never had an accident. And I'm thinking, why would, why would you let hogs in your house? B, so you had to housebreak them. It's still, from time to time, I think of old Buck and Blanche, and I think, well, you found the only two people on earth that would treat you that way.
No
You
kidding.
really lucked out.
Right.
I got some stuff from a conversation. I was talking to a gentleman I've known for years, Michael Weller, and it's not questions so much as there are a few, but it was notes I made while talking to him because we go back a ways. And so it was one of those, Ben, tell me about this, tell me about that. And I'm making notes as we go, thinking, Denise and I will be on the phone Wednesday on a podcast. Maybe I ought to save these. Can I run through a couple of them?
I reckon.
Well, one was dressing appropriately. I see people nowadays dress like, to my generation, dress like clowns. I see people who are multimillionaires doing extremely well, wearing t-shirts and so on. That's just not me. On the other hand, I went to the other extreme one day. Uh, I was hired to do a several day long sales training for Weston's Club Regina in Cabo San Lucas. And I was in my seminar. I've trained directly and indirectly almost every timeshare vacation ownership person on the planet because the closers has been their Bible since the industry started. The whole closer series, especially parts 1 and 2. And so I was familiar with them, been to a few, because if I want to stay somewhere and don't want to pay for it, all I have to do is go to a timeshare resort, tell them who I am, and offer to do 30 minutes at their morning sales meeting. All of a sudden, the room is free, meals are free, and so on. So I've been around them, but I was going there with my business head on, not noticing that everybody else was dressed like a Hawaiian drug dealer, straw hats, loud shirts, cut off pants, uh, flip flops or Bergenstocks or whatever they're called.
Were they carrying coconuts with straws?
Yeah, some of the tourists were.
I
The
bet.
little subtlety that I missed was that the salespeople were dressed that way too. About as casual as I let the salespeople I work with get is a polo shirt with a logo on it. Hello, I'm with the company. What I say actually means something, so on. So anyway, I check in at night, go up to the room, get up in the morning, put on my three-piece black tailor-made suit with a white shirt, of course, and the black tie, and pick up my $700 Hartman briefcase. Back in those days, 700, I don't know what they go for now, and headed down to the meeting room. I get on the elevator, and there's two ladies there in vacation gear, and they begin mumbling to each other. They were the first people that told me at the resort in so many words, perhaps I was not dressed appropriately.
Did they think you were an undertaker and somebody
Well,
had
that's
died?
close,
I
because as the
bet.
elevator got to their floor and the door opened, as they walked away, one of them said to the other, I don't know, I think someone died.
That would have been me too. I would have been going,
Yeah,
okay,
and I'm
does
thinking,
anybody know where Bertha is?
yeah,
She checked in
perhaps I'm a
today.
little overdressed. I was saved by the fact that in all of my black suits, I used to have wild linings. I would tell my tailor, put in the wildest lining you can find for the inside of the coat and for the back of the vest. And so before I got to the meeting room, I had folded up the coat inside out, hung it over my briefcase, which accomplished two things. One, it showed the wild lining. Two, it covered the Hartman briefcase because that didn't really fit into their festive mood either. Took off my tie, and then every time I got a chance, I turned around to get something or to write on the blackboard or whatever to reveal the wild back on the vest. So they never got to see the full funeral approach. But the message there is dress appropriately. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Three-piece black suit does not go well at a timeshare resort. Sloppily clothes. I have a client who I'm still trying to ease into better dress, who looks like somebody who just crawled out from under your car, who sells automobiles. And he's pretty good. He's near the top of the leaderboard, but he could be doing twice that or three times that if he looked like a decent human being. Instead, he wears a baseball cap that's way past its wash date, uh, sometimes at an angle. Occasionally, I've seen pictures with it backwards, t-shirt. And he's I wouldn't, I could make an argument that if he was your up at the car dealership, you'd be wasting your time to talk to him as a customer, never mind as a salesperson. And so dress appropriately, whatever that is. My father was there's a town out here in California called Apple Valley, California. better known as Roy Rogers' home. My father sold Roy and Dale Evans their first ranch in Apple Valley in 1948. Dad was a sophisticated gentleman, Southern gentleman, who'd spent much of his youth, young adulthood in Massachusetts with upper class folks. So it wasn't like he didn't know how to dress, but in Apple Valley, they all of the salespeople, and he made them do it. He was the sales manager. All of the salespeople dressed like Roy Rogers, cowboy hat, fancy shirt, with the designs on it, cowboy belt, pants like a horseback rider would wear, and cowboy boots. And it always cracked me up when I'd see old pictures of him. I say, Dad, this is when you were a cowboy. And he says, don't remind me. He was very good, did a great job there, but he was dressing appropriately because that was the theme of Apple Valley ranchos it was called in those days. The logo was a guy twirling a rope, designed after a guy named Newt Bass, a pot-bellied owner of the organization. He was the logo and so on. So they create, not only were they in the West, they created a Western theme and dressed to it. When
Well,
we
that was the
left,
culture. I mean, a lot of
yeah,
places have, but look, I'm in smack dab in the middle of Cajun country.
mm-hmm,
You can spot them,
yep,
especially the women. You can spot them. You can look to your left. You're driving down the street and you know that lady's Cajun. You don't need to hear a word out of her mouth. They have a culture that they dress to, that they look like.
absolutely. And if you're going to do business there, find out where they get their clothes
No.
and
No.
pick up a little Cajun accent and settle in.
I'll drink the coffee, but that's as far as I go. Yeah, but they're nice, nice, nice people, but they have a very distinct look in
Mm-hmm,
terms of how they dress, definitely how they sound. And I don't argue with the culture. I just, I fit in as best as I can. But I'm also wearing, most of the time, I'm wearing cute but casual clothes. So I don't
mm-hmm.
look like I, got up, curled my hair, which God it doesn't need it. But when I'm out and about, I look pretty casual, but I'm clean and tidy and my clothes are really cute. So
Absolutely.
nobody's looking at me oddly. I fit right in.
And that's uh, in selling, that's the low, and I don't mean this as an insult. I'm saying that's the low point. You don't go beyond that
No.
to looking homeless, but you're neat
Well, are
and
you sure?
clean and well dressed
But
and
Walmart, what are you saying?
well,
Okay,
Walmart's
fine.
an extreme case. It's their people have on the blue shirt with the logo, and they look like some of them look like General Patton. They've got all their awards stuck on their collars and everything,
Oh,
and
I
God love
never
them.
go in there. They bring my groceries to me.
And then some of them, uh, some of the customers look like the people say, the Walmart customer. Well, I'm a Walmart customer. I take mild offense at that. But there's an example of Sam Walton dressed them up versus probably the way they looked the day they got hired.
Mm,
And then when in doubt, put on the vest with the logo of the big star asterisk on the back,
right, right.
and so on, and make them look like part of the team. The object of the game is to know the players from the customers,
That makes
so you
sense.
know who to ask for help. Walmart story. Gigi was in there the other day looking for something, and whatever it was she was looking for was behind the locked glass. She had to get somebody. And when she was telling me the story, I thought, I'm glad Sam Walton isn't around to hear this. He's already dead, but it would have killed him. Gigi said, ask somebody to unlock the glass because whatever she wanted was behind the glass. And he says, I'm busy doing something right now. Ask that lady over there. Turned away a customer, and he's got the vest on and everything. So Gigi bit her tongue, got the other person to come open the door, and she said, Gigi said, I understand you're concerned about shrinkage, theft is the word for it, and that you have to do battle against that. But I've seen two or three people walk out of here when they couldn't find today, that day. I've seen two or three people walk out of here when they couldn't find somebody to unlock the cabinet, and it was just more trouble than it was worth. And she said it crossed my mind. I can get whatever it was she was looking for, lots of places. And the lady said, I don't care. And I
She did
thought,
not.
yeah, whoever Sam Walton is, you could hear thumping. I'm sure he was flipping around
Oh
his
my
basket.
God. And
Really,
I'm one of those people, I will walk out. During the beginning of COVID, which, I never wore a mask. I didn't, I just don't go anywhere anyway. But when I went to my favorite grocery store over here, when it was just starting, they had everything locked up. People were they were wearing their mask, their little cloth mask, which even
yeah,
I knew was ridiculous. And
yeah,
it looked like they were UN people. They had the big shields and they had the shields between. And I looked around and I left. I said, I'll just go to Amazon. You're not going to make me stand around not able to breathe because this one little man was, you have to wear a mask. You have to wear a mask. No, Uncle Bob, I don't. And I
right.
didn't. I left. That's another story. But I didn't go back to that store and I loved that store, but I didn't go back there for 3 years. It really bothered me what they were doing to their customers.
Gigi and her one of her lady friends went to McDonald's to meet for coffee, our local McDonald's store, which is so bad and has been for years. In the book Weymouth, I wrote a short Ray Considine's book on why are you making it so hard to give me for me to give you my money. In Weymouth, I wrote a small chapter on that McDonald's, how bad it was. And that was years ago. I'm happy to report it's still as bad as it ever was, but now they've gone to the kiosk thing. And so Gigi and the lady went in to get coffee, and I don't know how they handled it because Gigi doesn't like having to order it herself and so on. And but when she finally was paying for it, I guess, I don't know, she had an encounter with the counter person. And she said, while I was ordering this, 6 or 7 people came in, didn't see anybody behind the counter except one person who kept pointing at the kiosk, and they left. People that it came in, parked, got off the freeway or whatever, parked, came into your store, saw the kiosk and the lack of service, and they left. And this lady says to her, I assume it was a lady, said, "Yeah, about half of our customers walk out." Can
And they
you
don't
can you
know.
imagine?
No. And I would be one of those people because listen, people, hands are nasty. They just are. You don't know where they've been, what they've been doing. Yeah, I don't want to touch something that's smeared with somebody else's fingertips. I just don't. So I would be leaving too. But fortunately, everything practically that I own is delivered to me. But that's a good thing, or I'd be starved to death a long time ago. But
Well, everything we're
it's
discussing goes
crazy.
back to
Service,
bad
customer
customer service.
service.
Yeah, customer
Exactly.
service, take care of them like they're your best friend, et cetera. And if you're a business owner listening to this, incentivize your people to do that. People, some sales trainers and so on, like me, say everybody's on the same team and we're all in this together. And if you greet the customer as the receptionist, you're part of the sales team. Well, really? Do you get paid to be this charming and friendly and so on? Get them all on the
Yes, you
sales
do.
team
You
with
actually
with
do.
a profit sharing thing, if nothing else.
Right.
And saying hello shouldn't earn you $5, but you should know what the percentage of the profit that the non-sales people, the non-customer contact people are going to get if the place is clean, they're greeted warmly, et cetera, from beginning to end. I've worked with a lot of dentists for some bizarre reason. I did a big thing with 3,000 dentists years ago, and they're still around me. So it wasn't a battle plan. I was just hired to give a talk. But dentist offices are a great example. I look at it like a car wash. They hit the door and they should be greeted. The lobby should be clean. Thank you to the
Oh,
custodian,
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And then nice displays of other things they sell should be there. That's a breakthrough for a lot of people. I know some
And a
dentists.
coffee bar.
Yeah,
Dentists now have a nice coffee bar.
exactly.
You can get water. You're not going to get a cookie, obviously, but you can have coffee. You can have a small soda. If you ask for a soda, they're hidden in a little refrigerator, but they have them.
Absolutely.
They want you to be comfortable because they know you're nervous when you walk in.
And some of, yeah, you don't want to be there time
No,
wise. You're afraid of the pain. You're afraid of bad news
I'm
and
always afraid of the bill.
the bill. Yep.
Yeah, that's the
So
part. I'm like, oh my God, what is this going to cost
that's a
me?
great point. And there are a lot of other businesses like that where you're starting out in the hole because the customer doesn't want to be there for whatever reason. Buying a car is one. Everybody's got a car. Everybody's had several cars. Everybody's going to have several more cars, but they don't want to buy them. They don't want the interaction with the salesperson because of the reputation. And I'll have to go talk to my manager and all the nonsense they run into. Uh, but in the dentist's office, I was able to explain it to them. Get them all on the profit sharing plan and divvy it up based on time and service and so on, if they don't have a direct impact on the sale itself. And then the receptionist is the first part of the car wash, and he or she does their job and doesn't just say sit down and so on. They explain what's going to happen. So and so will be out in a minute. Then they make sure they make a show, whether they actually call anybody or not, of picking up the phone and saying, Ms. Griffiths is here. And so you know you're in line, you're in the system. Then somebody comes out, receptionist introduces you to that person, whoever it is, probably the dental hygienist, who then takes you to the back, explains what's going to happen, and introduces you to the dentist, who then turns you back over to somebody else who introduces you to the finance person if the bill is such that it might need financing. Had a friend go, was semi interested in getting some, what do you call them? The fake teeth that are inserts, uh, ones where everybody looks like they came from the same place. Uh, I forget what they're called. Anyway, where they insert the
I think they're
individual.
veneers, and I've been noticing that, and I don't watch TV, but every once in a while I'll turn on Newsmax and they'll have these horrible commercials with this one guy, and I call them the dentist, the Canadian teeth, because they're thick, they're massive. I mean, he talks funny and they're so blindingly white. And I wince every time I see what would otherwise be a fairly decent looking guy. But those teeth are just god awful, and I've noticed them on Canadian actresses. So those are, I
Implants.
call them implants and
Yeah,
veneers.
yeah.
And yeah, those are
Implants.
Canadian teeth. They're thick and they're huge and they're ugly.
The was somewhere one day when a guy gave a big smile and he had one of those, blinding white teeth, and he was of
Yeah,
an age where you don't have blinding white teeth. Should have toned down the color. But anyway,
man, I've
somebody
seen that
met
too.
him and said, "Those are great implants. Where'd you get them?" Now, if somebody says, it's like somebody saying to a lady, "That's a beautiful wig. Where'd you get it?"
Or a great boob job. Who'd you
Yeah,
go to?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
okay, I'm leaving now.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
Anyway, this
just so
guy, friend
vain.
of mine, goes into the dentist or the whatever you go to for those things, and his teeth needed a little work here and there, but it wasn't a big deal. He was of an age where you can sort of have teeth that aren't perfect. And they groped around his mouth for a little while and said, "Yeah, we can fix all this." $65,000.
No, no,
Now, I'm from a
no,
different
no.
generation, but there's nothing. You got to fix my whole head, eyes, brain, and breathing to
Yeah,
begin to talk about $65,000. But
I know.
anyway, my point is somebody's got to talk you to the finance person, et cetera, and then out the door, and the receptionist says goodbye to you. We set up a system like a car wash where nothing gets missed. And then everybody feels like they're in on the game. Some of my dentist friends are now on the program, say my office has never been cleaner. The custodians do a better job than they've ever done because A, they're part of the team, and B, once a month they get a check for their share of, I think his case is 10% of the profits.
Nice.
So get them in and
Right.
get them on. And
But you
then,
said something, I have to interrupt you before I forget
sure.
again because I wrote it down, but you said something that I don't think we've actually covered this. And when you say, they come in and she picks up the phone and said, Mrs. Griffiths is here. I don't think people who are serving you or attending to you or trying to pay attention to you understand the power of us hearing our own
Hmm.
names. If you can't say our names or mention us by name, we're kind of invisible.
Absolutely. I am one of those who, when I enter an establishment, if they're a name tag establishment, I'm looking for name tags, even before I'm looking for faces, because I want to call Denise,
Right,
and so on. I even kid with them. I say, "Do you recognize me, Denise?" No. Do you remember playing softball? Do you remember Coach Ben? And some of them will lie and say, "Oh, yes, yes, I'm sorry." But I trick them because I know their name.
right.
I never coached softball, and several of them have said, "I never played softball in my life."
Who
So,
are you? Go away.
but
No,
anyway, but now we're kidding and talking and so on, and I get better service.
right.
I get bumped to the head of the line. I get the best table. Um, and so it goes both ways. If I'm the server, I'm doing a great job for you, making you feel like $1 million. When I'm the customer and you're the server, I'm doing a, a game on you, for lack of a better word, to make you feel like $1 million so I get the best service.
And we
And
talked about this very, very briefly some months back. I do this when I have to call AT&T or, any place where most of them are not going to speak really great English, but they're trying hard and God bless them. I speak two languages, English and snark. I have a degree in snark, but I will always, if I didn't catch their name the first time, I'll say, tell me your name again. And we're
right,
off and running because they want
absolutely.
to know that I'm paying attention, that I know their name, that I'm interested. It's not difficult to do. And I really do. I don't want to say, well, hey, thanks, whatever your name is. Bye. I
Yeah.
mean, and I get great service without fail.
And then you can be gone for a month or a year. And when you walk in, they know you're different than the others.
Yeah.
Even if they don't remember your name instantly, they know this is a friendly face who treated me right last time. And so I'm forever getting that, "Hey, how are you?" Like I'm a long lost relative. And I
Right.
don't, with my funny name, sometimes I actually do remember. And then I have a response, "Hi, how are you today? I'm handsome. Thank you for asking." And soon we're both laughing and so on. I know I'm Ben Gay, just like the back rub. I have a little motion I do with my right hand on my left wrist and so on to get remembered. But I do exactly the same thing on the sales side of the table. They're they're buddies and friends. One quick note from the Michael John Weller conversation. He's recommended to me, or asked me to recommend to him, excuse me, a book he should read. And I've had thousands of books, and I've never read a book I didn't get something out of, even if it was how not to write a book. So that's almost an unfair question, but it made me think back to Winston Churchill, and I'm paraphrasing. I don't have the quote in front of me, but he said basically the uneducated, I think he said man because of when he was alive, but the uneducated person should read books of quotes. And as I look down at that note from that conversation with Mike, I looked up and I have a little side table here next to my desk. I'm surrounded by books, but on the side table, on my right side, I just counted them while we were talking. There are 17 books here between the two bookends, and not counting the big unabridged dictionary and so on, but the 17 books within the book stand, almost every one of minus maybe two have to do with quotes. And the reason is in a quote book, you get the very best of that person's ideas. I think I've told you I read Jimmy Carter's memoirs, and I'm from Georgia, where the Atlanta Journal Constitution, on the day they made him governor or president or something, in the editorial page, the headline was, God, what have we done? Uh, Most people, I know he's dead, and we don't speak unkindly of the dead, but many of us believe perhaps he was a little inept. I have a friend who knows I love historical biographies and autobiographies, and also he sent me Carter's memoirs, and was very little in it. I didn't know, having been a Georgian. My father knew his father because they were both in the food business, peanuts and other stuff. And but while flipping through it or scanning it or whatever, I came across a quote I use on a regular basis. It said that the minister in the Plains Baptist Church said, if you were arrested today and charged with being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? To
I
which
see that one quite a bit.
yeah, and I've changed that around in selling to if you were arrested today and charged with being a master closer or a sales infiltrator, would there be enough evidence to convict you? It's the only thing I got out of that whole book. But if I'd followed Winston Churchill's advice, I would have found that in a quote book without having to go through all the rest of the book. So 17, 18 quote books within 18 inches of my right shoulder. And that's
Right.
where I get a lot of information. I sometimes thumb through it in a sales presentation if it's on the phone, thumb through it looking for the thing I really want to express it. My speeches are laden with quotes, and I give them credit whenever I can think of it. I have one in front of me that I discussed with Mike Weller, and I have to look up who did it. It was a field marshal, the military term. A field marshal in the 19th century said, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy.
Hmm.
And the reason that's there is because we were discussing what to do when your sales presentation comes off the tracks. And I said, well, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. He said, yeah, Field Marshal, and he knew the name, Field Marshal, some German name, in the 19th century said that. So I thought, well, the next time I use it, I'm going to give credit by name to the person. But it's a great
Right.
sales lesson. No battle plan survives contact with the enemy. I'm forever having to say I don't regard the customer as the enemy, but you have a plan and you sit down and you begin to do it, and then they didn't go to prospect school, or if they did, they didn't take notes, so they say something you weren't counting on, and you better be like the field marshal from the 19th century and understand that that was the battle plan, but it's no longer operative. So be
Right.
flexible on your feet.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite, when we were talking about Jehovah's Witnesses, that reminded me of this one. It's one of my favorite quotes from Winston Churchill. And he says, success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm.
Absolutely. It's one of the great ones of all
It
time.
is. Yeah. Well, I'm with you on quotes. I mean, and they have been around. I mean, if you read the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, those quotes have been around, God, forever and ever and ever.
Because they're
There's a
true.
reason.
And
Yes,
it's
they
the essence of that person. But
right.
Winston Churchill, you could probably sum up. He did many great things and said and gave some inspirational talks. But I'll bet you I could sum up 90% of Winston Churchill with 10 quotes. Yeah, I have to look and see, what they are. But there's 10, we will fight them on the beachheads. We'll fight them in the hedgerows. England will never die. Never, never, never give up,
Right.
never, um, etc. About 10 of them would sum up the entire man. You don't have to read 15 books on Churchill, and there's many more than that. Books of quotes will do it, and it must be a good idea because he said it.
He was a brilliant man. I mean, I love to read about him. I didn't
Hmm.
realize for the longest kind of time that he was born in Blenheim Palace. I went, oh, I didn't realize that he came from that kind of a family, but he did. Next week, Ben, I'm making a note. I want you to share with us how important it is for listeners who are going to join us in week 8. How important is it for them to catch up on the earlier weeks of the podcast? And how do those episodes really lay the foundation for understanding advanced techniques like sales infiltration? So before, we are out of time, big time out of time. Um, what do you have in mind for next week, other than the orders that I just gave you?
yeah, yeah, other than that, nothing. The one of the things that several people have asked for, and Mike Weller said, you keep hinting you're going to do it and you don't do it, is to go through some of the people that I've had the pleasure and honor of working with and tell you, sort of take you behind the scenes, the good, bad, and the ugly about them. I'm glancing at the list that I will work from right now, and I see J. Douglas Edwards. He's gone. I can talk about him openly. There's some things that were less than uh, the image that he had. William Penpatrick, probably the most influential person in my life, except short of my father, is on the list. Uh, there's some things about him that I've always been cautious because I don't want, if somebody's built their life around Zig Ziglar's teaching, then I don't want to say Zig Ziglar murdered kittens, and destroy your whole life by taking away your leader. So I tread gently, but there are things that would be comforting to people to know you don't have to be some godlike creature that descended from the heavens to be successful. 99%, 95% at least of the people that I know who've literally moved the world in various ways, including me, were just regular folks who had a couple of things they got famous for and were smart enough to capitalize on them. But they were just regular folks.
Exactly. What is that old saying? I put my feet in my pants 1 foot at a time or something,
Yeah.
and I'm badly paraphrasing it, but it makes sense. I mean, you stand up, you get out of bed, hopefully you take a shower, then you put on your pants. I mean, we're all just people.
Well, I'm ready when you're ready for next week.
Okay. Well, I've got a few questions, and I know you've got some questions that you want to share next week. So, listen, everybody, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Closers Inner Circle podcast with me, Denise Griffitts, and Ben Gay III. And to stay updated on all of our future episodes, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. And I mentioned it earlier. You can go straight to yourpartnerinsuccessradio.com where this is sponsored over there. I own that one. And I'm very important, Ben. You caught how I said I own that one. I wanted to smack myself as soon as it came out of my mouth. But anyway, you can find us anywhere where you find your podcast, or go to yourpartnerinsuccessradio.com and subscribe there. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, really Audible. You can find us on Audible. You can find us anywhere. And be sure to send us your questions. Ben always gets the good ones. I don't know why that is. I'm going to have to start getting a bit more proactive about saying, hey, somebody asked me something. I got stuff to say. But apparently I don't. So, anyway, thank you, everybody. We will see you next week for episode 8, I believe, week 8. Ben, thank you.
Thank you, dear. See you in a week.
Okay, bye.
Bye.